Shane, there are rumors that a really huge hardware revision could be coming to the Nintendo Switch. You excited?
No!
Hot take. According to an analyst at Nico Partners, Daniel Ahmed, the Nintendo Switch is doing really well.
Stupidly well.
Yeah, we knew this for a while, but apparently in 2018, the Nintendo Switch itself sold about 5.6 million units, and over the month of December of 2018, sales were ridiculous. It was selling really well, much better than the PS4 and the Xbox One, which is
twice as good as the PlayStation 4. That's crazy.
Yeah.
To the point that most people are saying this is the best month a video game console has sold ever.
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
that's nuts.
Yes.
That doesn't usually happen.
I knew that the Switch was going to do relatively well, but I didn't know it was going to do this well. So that's very cool to hear. Alongside this other news, we are hearing rumors once again that there's going to be a revision of the hardware itself. We heard back in October that Nintendo was thinking about making a revision to the Switch hardware, and that would be maybe released sometime in the second part of 2019. But we got rumors now. This is from a Dutch gaming site, translated from a Japanese gaming site. The Dutch gaming site is Let's Go Digital, and the Japanese gaming site that this information is from is Gamespedia, okay? This information was stating that one of the revisions, there's supposedly going to be two revisions of the Switch hardware itself. One of the revisions could be the big Pro HD revision of the Nintendo Switch, a la what we've gotten with the PS4 and the Xbox One X. So, I don't know, man. We have to talk about this. Seeing the huge numbers that the analyst had given us, is this the right move now? Is this what should be going on? Should we be looking into different iterations of the Switch? I wanted to talk about this today.
Yeah. I don't think so. Folks, look, you may know me from having produced videos in the past where I've said very controversial things like, the Switch probably isn't going to do so great in 2018. And for a while there in 2018, it was true. It wasn't doing as good as the previous year. But man, December, around the time we rolled up to December, sales kept increasing, getting better and better. Smash just blew everybody's expectations away. It did so well. So December really proved to everyone that the Switch has some kind of extra life behind it that's going to make it even better than most Nintendo systems that we've seen in the past. But this comes at a cost, and that cost is not changing up what the Switch is so quickly. So Adam and I have sat down, and we've talked about a number of things that could be good revisions for the Switch, but very specific revisions.
Yeah. So first, when we heard about that news, that October news, that was from the Wall Street Journal. They had inside sources with Nintendo that were saying, "Hey, there's going to be a revision of the console, and it's probably going to be something lighter." They were saying that the folks at Nintendo were looking into different screens for the Switch, and possibly some other little tweaks here or there. The rumors that are coming out of Let's Go Digital and the Japanese site as well are of a huge 4K revision, and we're all right. Am I right in saying this? We're all right with the slightly tweaked revision.
Yeah. Should we explain that?
Yes, we should.
Okay. There is such a thing called a minor hardware revision. Now, minor hardware revisions can be very minor things that don't really affect the outside performance of the system to a huge degree. So, for instance, you can have a slimmer version of a PlayStation 4. Maybe it doesn't do much else than be smaller, and maybe it just has it runs a little bit cooler and stuff like that. So minor revision things that we would be okay with seeing on the Switch would be better, brighter, and more power efficient screen, more storage, better thermals so that it runs a little bit cooler than the traditional Nintendo Switch. Also better battery life, which I think everybody wants. And of course, probably, better hardware design and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not that it's bad.
No, but we've seen some of the chassis on Switches that are cracking and stuff, because like you mentioned, thermal issues. Another thing about a hardware revision, a minor tweaked hardware revision that we've noticed with consoles of the past and handhelds of the past is some of those can come in at a lower price point, which I believe would be really great for the Switch if they knocked off an extra 50 or so bucks. But we have seen minor tweaked hardware revisions that do add a little extra oomph, but not so much that it detracts or completely cuts off the library that was there previously, like the new Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah, if you go to the store, you see more of a little bit of a tweak and stuff like that. That's not such a big deal. And we actually like those kind of things. Those things are fine. But when it comes to the Nintendo Switch, there are certain things you definitely want to avoid, and there's an assortment of reasons. Yeah. Now, the majority of this video is going to be us telling you why these things shouldn't happen, because they can actually harm the position of Nintendo and the Switch in the marketplace right now. So let's start off with the most basic of things: consumer confusion over multiple models of the Switch on the market.
Well, okay, we wanted to talk a little bit because again, these are like huge grain of salt rumors that are from this Dutch gaming website that there's going to be 2 different models of the Switch in 2019.
Yeah.
That could be coming as early as the first half of 2019. I do not believe that for a moment. The other news from October about there being a slightly tweaked Switch in the second half of 2019 sounds more realistic to me.
Yeah. So you're right. There's the teeny one they're talking about, like the smaller Switch.
Yeah. So those were the rumors. So there's going to be a teeny version of the Switch, possibly an all-in-one version of the Switch, and then there's going to be a more powerful one. Let's talk about the teeny one first.
That's a terrible idea, folks. You do not want a small version of the Switch. I know you do. I know you're thinking, but Shane, I want to be able to take the Switch and put it in my pocket and stuff like that, and that's great. But you don't want that. You think you do, and the reason you think you do is because the concept of it being more portable would make it more attractive to a lot of consumers out there. The problem is, the moment they make a smaller Switch, you're going to have a couple things that happen. So we're likely looking at a unibody design, which means the entire Switch is one solid device, and the left and right Joy-Cons will not be removable. If they are removable, that means they had to make smaller Joy-Cons that will only work with that device, meaning that they've created an entirely new selection of controllers that only work with the smaller Switch and not both models of the Switch.
Yeah, anytime you have inconsistency in design, or inconsistency even in like the hardware that's within the unit itself, that takes away from the software library, it causes confusion and a lot of frustration when people pick up, let's say, okay, they pick up this unibody design of the Switch, and they pick up a copy of, what dare I say it, 1-2 Switch.
Yeah.
And they can't try to rip off the controllers from the side to sword fight or
people
milk the cow.
Play that game, but it can happen, right? So that's something you really want to avoid with that kind of stuff, and it's a big thing. There are other issues with unibody designs as well. Now, you get a smaller device, but that also means you get a smaller battery. That also means you might have much more hotter thermals running on there because it's a much smaller package, meaning that it heats up a lot faster. You may have a smaller screen. We would assume that if they were to make a smaller one, it would have a 720p screen. It would be a much smaller 720p screen, but you're having issues like that. Game developers are using what the Switch is now, and they have that in mind. So when you change that, it's going to create a lot of problems, I think, down the line. So as it stands right now, because of how many they're selling, because it's so successful as it is, I don't think making it smaller makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We have our cell phones on us right now for smaller device gaming. I think the Switch, at the size it is really nice. I can fit my cell phone in the face area of the Switch, and I like that. It doesn't even have to have a high resolution. I know making a high resolution screen sounds like a crazy idea, but the 720p screen looks so good at the form factor it's at. I just don't see a reason to go beyond that.
Yeah, I guess like one of the major bullet points for me right now in this entire discussion is that we're seeing such massive sales from the Switch, and we're seeing such like great sales from the hardware. It feels like the software itself is what's pushing the Switch to sell. It doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with the hardware and the form factor that it's in. It's Smash Brothers.
Well, no, but
it's Pokemon Let's Go. The next whatever, the next Animal Crossing game, the next gen Pokemon game.
There's no one out there that's going to be going, oh, I want to buy the Nintendo Switch because I want to watch movies on it. The time for that has passed. We've had 2 years of the Nintendo Switch on the market, and anyone that wants to watch Netflix, anyone that wants to watch YouTube, you can do those things now.
I think we do have the YouTube app.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're getting those application things now, right? But you could do that on your phone, and I think Nintendo understood that, so they're not focusing on that made a lot more sense at the time. But there are some other things to take into consideration.
So yes, we kept talking about this. 2 versions. There's the smaller version. You said it would probably be a unibody version, I guess, because of the form factor. It's so small.
Yes.
You'd expect it to be tightened up. There's also rumored to be a 4K version of the Switch. And this is like even crazier to me than the smaller version because, we talked about inconsistency with the hardware itself. If you're making a 4K Switch, like you're going to have a huge screen on this thing now? Is that what we're to expect? And again, if the form factor of the screen changes, it's very likely that the form factor of the Joy-Con would change. There is a rendering on, and again, this is just like, consider this a fan rendering. A rendering on the Dutch site itself of what this Pro console could possibly look like. And the Joy-Con are huge and changed. This is a horrible idea. There's so many Joy-Con out in the wild right now. Do not change that form factor.
Look. Let's just we take these two rumors as they are. Let's say that the small Switch happens. I believe that the smaller Switch is more likely to happen than this 4K design. So here's what we're talking about. There are a bunch of issues with a 4K Switch, and I know everyone's out there going, "Oh, I just want a much more powerful Switch." But you don't want that because there are huge problems with that go way beyond the other ones. So, for one, consumer confusion. As we mentioned before, this is a huge problem. Mm-hmm. Consumer confusion is one of the leading problems, or one of the leading issues to consumers not buying devices because they get confused. How do we know that? Last generation, the Wii U happened, and consumers thought that was just a plug-on for the Wii. And look, you're watching a video game show where we talk about video game news and stuff like that. You know what's going on in the industry. Congratulations, you are the upper 1% of the gaming crust. But when it comes to everyone else on the market, they're as confused and lost as anyone. So it really becomes an issue when you're thinking about the way that they would sell these to consumers. You have a Switch and a Pro Switch. That stuff doesn't really work when it comes to gaming devices that they're not buying for themselves, because with a lot of consumers out there, they're buying it for their kids. And if you go to a store and you see a really expensive Switch or a cheap one, you usually buy the cheap one.
That's right. Yeah. So if there was a 4K version of the Switch and it's more expensive, and let's say there's software that plays only on that 4K version of the Switch, or that utilizes the power more. So let's say Red Dead finally comes to the Switch.
Sure.
You won't be able to play that with your other console. There could be some problems there, some inconsistencies there. Look, we already, even though, like you mentioned, we're usually in the know about how like the different products work and stuff. There's like, even just looking at the 3DS line, luckily, a lot of that software can jump from one system to the other, but there's some games that can't.
Yeah.
So, and there's the 3DS line, the new 3DS line, the 2DS line, the 2DS XL, and you get into your DS games and stuff. That's already a big convoluted sort of ocean there, but at least there is the ability for the most part to move software over from one to the other. If there is a 4K Switch and media specifically for the powerhouse that will be that unit, people are going to get upset. People are going to be confused. Violence in the streets.
I mean, the idea that it has a high-resolution screen, has a better processor, a system on a chip, has all those things that improve upon it. They sound nice at first, but when you really think about how that would affect developers as well. Like a developer that's going to make a game on the Switch right now goes, okay, if I'm making a game on the Switch, I'm making a game that has to work in two ways. Docked and undocked.
Right.
Done. You only have one resolution to worry about on undocked, which is 720p. It can be a little bit below that and upscale to 720p. It really doesn't matter, as long as you have those two formats to start thinking about. If suddenly you introduce a 4K version of the console that has the ability to do 4K docked and 1080p portable, there is the concept that what you're actually getting is a docked experience in the portable mode with a 1080p screen, but there's a lot of issues with that too, because it takes a lot more energy, a lot more power. Suddenly you're trying to make a thing like the advantages they would have of refining the system now to make it a little bit cooler and stuff like that. You would lose those advantages by stuffing way more inside the Switch right now, and I don't think that's a smart move.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Right now, the main focus of what they should be doing with the Switch is what was first rumored way back when in October. They should be taking the system as is and saying, okay, there are some problems here. Even things as small as the flexibility of the console.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the Joy-Con themselves feel a little bit shaky. If they concentrate more on making making the chassis of the Switch itself more solid. That those heat issues, they should not be focusing on like adding more heat problems to the Switch by adding like more hardware intensive, stuff.
Funny enough, we are one of the few people out there that have actually owned a Switch longer than consumers because Nintendo sent our Switch out earlier. So we were able to be playing it for a much longer time than other people. We've noticed things, and look, a lot of people have noticed this. The flex on the controllers gets worse as it ages.
Sometimes that rumble gets pretty loud.
It does,
too.
it does, yeah. It feels like things are getting a little bit loose inside.
Yeah.
Another problem that we're having that we're seeing on ours is whenever you put the Switch in the dock, at the bottom left and right, there's like little marks on the bottoms of the screen because that's where it kind of rests in the dock.
That's been a problem for a while.
Yeah, we're seeing that. And then when it comes to the heat problems, this has been something that's been mentioned a lot. Luckily, we haven't seen any problems with ours, but the heat, because of how hot the system can get, it's actually starting to crack the base and body of the system. So what you're getting are these little heat fractures in the plastic body.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's a problem. You shouldn't be seeing that kind of stuff. So a revision of the existing hardware can fix that.
Yep.
The moment you go to 4K and you're introducing a whole new group of factors, suddenly you can't fix the things that are still a problem with the existing model. This revision of hardware can usually happen silently where people don't notice it, but in this instance, I think it wouldn't be such a bad idea if Nintendo introduced like a system that had a lot more memory inside of it that just, said a couple things like a brighter screen. Longer battery life.
Yeah, like I literally would be fine with them approaching this as they've done the 3DS line, just call it the new Nintendo Switch, and have the same sort of beefed up functionalities of like a new 3DS. I mean, they worked on the 3D a little bit more. They added the thumbstick and stuff, just some quality of life improvements. That's all I feel like we should be seeing from the Switch, because it is a great console and there's a lot of great ideas there. You don't have to go like super big right now, and we're seeing that the market is blowing up right now because of the software. We've always known that the software was the issue. It wasn't the hardware. So yeah.
I mean,
tiny tweaks.
Tiny tweaks. I've actually read articles online where people are talking about, I want a glass cover for it, like a glass screen instead of the plastic one.
Yeah.
Gorilla Glass 5, it doesn't scratch if you yell at it and throw it out of a brick. Or throw a brick at it, I guess.
Throw a brick at it, yeah.
Like,
you can already do that. You can buy the third-party glass covers for your Switch or whatever.
I mean, you could. I just don't see a reason to do any of that stuff. I think the Switch, the design of it as it is right now, just needs to be refined. That's all it really needs.
Do you, kind of wrapping things up, we're pretty sure that there's going to be another iteration of this thing coming at least in the second half of 2019, and it's not strange because with consoles like the DS and 3DS, we have seen iterations after as little as like a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
We're going to be at about 2.5 years in with the Switch at that time. Do you think it's the right time to be making an iteration like this?
The smaller iteration we're talking about, that teeny little upgrade where they just improve things on it, I think it's about time we've seen something like that. I would like to see more colors for the body. I'd like to see more variations. I mean, the controllers on the side changing out is a great idea because you can make your old Switch feel like a new Switch. That's kind of all I really want to see, longer battery life on the controllers and everything like that, right? Those revisions are the things I'm looking forward to. I do not want a Motion Plus edition. Right? Now, for those of you that may not remember, because maybe you're too young, which scares me so much, but the Wii had a Motion Plus accessory where basically you could add on a chip or a little box.
It's a little plug-in tab that I have a couple of them at home right now.
So you plug it into the bottom of the Switch and you get better motion control. And initially that's how you would do that, and you could buy some games that actually had that bundled, but then they just started making new Wii controllers that had that built in. Those are the ones I own because I hated that box at the end. But that idea of like adding a whole new line of functionality to a controller by creating a whole new model of the controller, those things fracture your user base. Every time you fracture your user base, those people are not going to buy that thing, or they're going to have a lot more returns because they're confused. The more consumer confusion you create, the worse it can be. This is the same reason why we're not talking about having a standalone Switch that just plugs up to your TV and it isn't portable. Because the moment you do that, you fracture the user base. You confuse consumers and people don't understand what's going on.
And this system is built with that sort of nomadic ability in mind. So if you do have like a set-top box, like
Yeah.
you're talking about right now, you could be, again, segmenting the market as far as software is concerned. So some software that you want to play on the go, maybe with a touch screen, like a World of Goo, you wouldn't be able to do that necessarily with a set-top box.
Yeah, the issues that exist right now for the Switch are really not with the way that it doesn't need 4K, right? 4K doesn't have the same install base as 1080p screens do and stuff like that. So there really isn't a need for that. That's a tomorrow issue, but that's not a today issue. Back when the Wii came out, it was a bigger problem because the Wii came out at a time when many people still had 4x3 TVs, but we were getting into digital television. So the Wii looked gross on high definition TVs. A high definition Switch, which is what we have now, a 1080p Switch on a 4K TV, looks great.
Yeah, it still looks good.
Yeah, there's no problem, right? In the past, when you were doubling up those pixels with the old composite inputs, what you would get was this really blurry image that wouldn't look too great. Go watch My Life in Gaming. They talk about this like 1 million times a week, and they tell you everything about it. But with the Switch, when you're doing a digital upgrade to another resolution, your TV usually has that stuff built into it, so it doesn't make it look gross. That's how you fix things in like a digital statement. So you don't need to do that right now with 4K. With that in mind, though, there is a lot of people out there that want that power in the Switch for whatever reason, and maybe sometime way down the line when they introduce a Switch 2, that's when you think about that stuff. But to make that revision, that smaller stuff, I just don't think it's needed right now.
Well, but do you think they can make the jump to 4K within this console lifespan, or that they should? I don't think they should. That's maybe that's pushing the conversation a little bit too much, but
it's too difficult though.
Yeah.
It's because
yeah.
just
Again, it would segment.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter where it is; it would still segment the market.
It really would, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just too early. The costs of that would be extraordinary, and all the issues we just talked about.
Messaging.
It would just be way too much. When they make a Switch 2, and they have to call it a Switch 2, if they call it a Switch U, if they call it a Switch or whatever, or they change the name, I will be so angry.
They go Swedish.
I know, I'd be so angry. Just call it the Switch 2. You know how great it was when you had the NES and then you made the Super Nintendo? It just sounded like
Switch would be
Super
awesome.
Switch would be fantastic. That's all you got to do. It even worked when you got to the Nintendo 64 because 64 was greater than Super and it was greater than 1. You know what I mean? Like, it still sounded like it was...
Is that how numbers work?
I guess.
It goes 1, Super, 64, and then
Look,
Cube.
It's the naming problems that these things can have.
Sure,
like the 3DS is the new 3DS, right? And I hate that there's a new 3DS.
2DS, DS.
Yeah. And you know what? If you don't think that's a problem, go look at Apple right now. Apple's naming scheme of all of their products is crazy. I can't even tell you what the new iPhone is right now, because there's X, there's XR, there's XS, I don't think there's an XL, which is really weird.
It's the iPhone 64DD.
Yeah, that. Yeah. So this is how you avoid those things. When it comes to the Switch, the way that they have to make this work for the next one is just a silent upgrade that might say 128 gig model or a larger space or brighter screen model, whatever it is. Don't call it new Switch. Don't call it Switch 2. Use the Switch 2 moniker.
They can get away with new. I think they can get away with new.
No, because they can't call it new, because then what do you call Switch 2? See, you don't do that, because if you do Switch,
Super
then
Switch.
new
I thought we agreed on Super Switch.
Okay, you can call it Super Switch.
It's Super Switch.
Whatever. You can do certain upgrades, but you got to be very careful. And I think Nintendo knows that now.
Yes.
I think after the Wii U, they clearly understand it. So let's hope for the best. Because honestly, I just think people want more space in their Switches, and that's pretty much it.